Hey, this is Steve Sterlacci, and this is the Suhr Reactive Load IR. What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning into this video. This is a really exciting one for me because I'm a big fan of digital gear and using direct units like the Line 6 Helix. But in this case, I have kind of shifted gears a little bit, and I've now got a Suhr Reactive Load IR, which will allow me to use my tube amps in a direct setting. In plain layman's terms, there's tons of better technical explanations for what exactly it does to the amp and why, and all that sorts of stuff out there. But I'm just going to talk layman's terms if you're just a regular guitar player that just wants to know how this thing works. So essentially what I think of it as, it turns your tube amp into a direct signal. So what a direct signal means, you could just plug into something and go, and that's it. Normally with a tube amp, you usually can't get a silent sound. You have to plug into a speaker cabinet, which means you have to mic it up and all that stuff. But what the Suhr Reactive Load IR allows you to do is take your amp sound, your real tube amp, load down the signal to a line level. This has built-in impulse responses. There's also a version without, but this one does have them. I think there's 16 that are loadable, and it's basically, I think of it as I have my amp. So I have my 68 Fender Bassman that's on loan from my buddy John Boji. Thank you, John. And basically what this means is I can set this up as if I had any speaker cabinet that I wanted. I have it perfectly mic'd up, and that signal is getting directly sent back to me without hearing it in the room. This is really great if you're a touring musician that's supporting an artist and you're maybe on in-ears, or if you're gigging locally and you just want to keep stage volume down. This is a really great option for you. So taking a look around the unit, you'll see a lot of different knobs and features on it. It's got the IR select knob, which obviously lets you select the IR. The IR is basically your cabinet, which is basically your speaker sound. So whatever speaker cabinet impulse response you have loaded in, the ones that are included are great. So far I've played through them and I really enjoy all of them. There's a couple of different playthroughs where they can go through each one, but it's a little hard to make this a playing demo because my amp is going to sound different from your amp, and my speaker needs is going to be much different from your speaker needs. So it's not like you can recreate the tone that I'm getting here, but whatever. You have your tube amp at home, so you can use your imagination how great it's going to sound being plugged into this. You also have a headphone level. So there's a headphone out that obviously you just plug your headphones in, control your headphone volume. There's also an auxiliary in that controls like backing tracks, again, with MP3s. If you have, regular 1/8" cable that's playing songs from your laptop or something, you can plug that straight in. But that signal does not get recorded. Only the guitar sound will get recorded if you're recording with it. And then you have the DI level. So the DI level is the most interesting piece of this, and the thing that I had to spend the most time on. Really easy to set this thing up. You really just plug and play. But this DI level is really, really important because that's basically the input gain that's coming from your amp. So when I first got it, I thought that DI level was the signal that I'm sending out to front of house or to my recording interface, but that's not the case. That's actually the signal from your guitar amplifier and controlling how much gain. So if you have something like a Fender Princeton, low wattage tube amp that you're going into the reactive load with, you want to bring that level up because it's a lower wattage amp sending you less power. In the Bassman's case, I can keep it right about at noon. It's a little bit below noon, and it sits very nicely there. And you'll see that there is a clip knob underneath the IR select knob, and that will let you know if you're clipping the unit. So what I do is I plug it in, I turn it up, and I start really banging away and strumming hard, kick on my boost pedals, and I try to make it clip. So I turn up that DI level until I start seeing that clip light go on. And then once that clip light goes on, I will dial it back about maybe like 1/8 of a turn. This thing sends plenty of signal to the interface, so I'm not worried about that. It also has a +6 dB signal boost, so if you are not getting enough signal to front of house or to your interface, you can just flip that switch and boom, gives you an extra boost. It also has a high cut if you find that your direct sound is getting too harsh and trebly. I haven't found a need for this. I've tried this with a couple of different amps and I have not used the high cut, but it's a nice feature to have. So setting this thing up is super easy. I've got the unit right here. It's actually a lot smaller than I thought it would be. I kind of thought that it would be a bigger hulking chunky box, but it's not that big, and it's actually really light, so it's not going to be a downer on the road. In the other videos I saw, I feel like it looked a lot bigger, but this is the depth. Really not too bad at all. Yeah, pretty cool. Very compact. So flipping it over, so this here, this is your input from your amp. You just plug your amp right into there. This is if you want to use a real speaker on stage, or if you want to mic up a cabinet to get a blend of both sounds. You could do both at the same time right here. You have your USB here. That's if you want to change up the impulse responses. You can change the order or import your own. Here we have, what do we have? Unfiltered. The unfiltered out is if you do want to use something else to host your impulse responses, like a Helix. You can use the IRs in the Helix and send this unfiltered out back through your effects loop in the Helix, and you'll be good to go direct with that, whichever one you want. And then you have obviously the IR section, which will put the Suhr provided IRs or whichever ones you import based on what your position is on the dial. So I'm going to throw on my studio cans because obviously I'm going directly into my recording interface. You can also, by the way, now that I mentioned it, you can also send this out to a real cabinet still. So if you're someone who's gigging with this, you want a pristine signal going to front of house, you can send front of house one signal, and you can also send a signal to a real speaker cabinet on stage to give you that moving air feeling and having some stage volume behind you. So that's a really cool feature as well. All right, let's see what it sounds like. Here's the basement on about, it's jumping the channels on about 5. You know, kind of close to the breakup. I usually like to dial my amps in where if I go to the bridge pickup and really smash it, it gives me like a little bit of a hint of breakup. I also found that with the basement, if you get to that sweet spot where the amp starts to compress, it won't technically get much louder beyond that. So what happens at that point is the distortion just gets more saturated. So you really don't need to tweak too much of the DI level. Just a little side note for that. So let's see what happens if I am sending too much signal to it. Let's bring up that DI level knob. And you see that little clipping light down here? You'll now notice that's starting to clip. And you'll hear that crackliness. So from there, just dial it back and keep, messing with this until you get to your sweet spot. So that you get no clipping and no problem. That's literally as easy as it is to set this thing up. And to cycle through your IRs, you just turn this knob. Like I said, there's plenty out there. This is my preferred one, this bank 1, number 4. So there's 4 different banks with 4 IRs in each. They all sound great depending on your needs at home. I'm sure you're going to have no problem finding what you need. It also takes pedals really well. I mean, just like your amp would. So here it is. Here is my Nordland ODRC. So it takes pedals just like a normal amp would. So let's see what happens if I slam the input a little bit. This is just an analog band Boss EQ that I'm just punching into the front end with. And you could hear it still doesn't clip, well, you could see, I guess. You could still see it doesn't quite clip that that green light or that clip light, which is pretty cool. And I'm sending it a much hotter signal. So let's have a little bit of fun, and I'm gonna dime up the basement, both the volume knobs on 10. All right, so without touching anything, as far as the DI level, again, the DI is what the amp is sending here. Without touching that, let's hear what happens. So we're not getting any clipping on there, but I'm getting a little bit in my DAW, so I'm going to bring the gain back a little bit on there. So interestingly enough, I'm getting the clipping in my DAW, so it's coming from the interface, but the Suhr reactive load is not clipping. So you can get that fully cranked up basement sound. There's no pedals on, no overdrive, no dirt. This is just my amp, both of the knobs on 10 jumping channels. Really cool if you just want a straight ahead rock sound, punch somebody in the face with your amp sound. You could do that with the Suhr Reactive Load IR, just like that. So I wanted to thank you guys for tuning in and checking out the Suhr Reactive Load IR. Hope you guys consider picking one of these up. It's really going to be a huge part of my setup in the future. I'm thinking about moving to a completely hybrid setup using the HX Stomp and a real pedal board. Bring this along with a tube amp, and I'm going to be set getting any tone that I want, any amp sound that I want, without worrying about being too loud or, having to worry about miking a cabinet. Engineers having no idea what they're doing when they're trying to mic my cabs. But overall, I love this thing. I'm definitely going to be using it a lot, and I hope you guys consider picking one up. Thanks again for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video.